Are we good, yeah? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك يا رب الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alright folks, so I hope everyone's good. So today, inshallah, we're going to cover another big kind of topic slash aspect of the whole traveling debate discussion, and that is the concept of how long. How long am I a traveler for, or when do I become activated as a traveler? We've already discussed it from a distance point of view, and we have basically come to the conclusion that there is no clear evidence from Quran and Sunnah that specifies it's got to be exactly 48 miles or 16 farsakh or 4 barid, but that these are the positions of the majority of scholars, and we understood the reasons for that, and that's fine. But now it's about moving on to the issue of distance. So we finished off last week. At the bottom of 372, right? Yes, 372 in the Sharh al-Mumti'. And so that means that from the Arabic we are just going to be covering today أو نوى إقامة أكثر من 4 أيام أو ملاح معه أهله لا ينوي الإقامة ببلد لزمه أن يتم. One must pray the prayer in full if one intended to be a resident in a place for more than 4 days. And then finally, if a sailor who has his family with him doesn't intend residency in any place, any single place. Alright? So that's the Arabic text. That's the text of Imam al-Hajjawi. But let's take that apart now. Alright, so in the middle of 372, you can see that Sheikh says this now turns into our 10th matter, our 10th point. Al-Mas'alatul Ashira, the 10th issue that we need to cover. So what is that? فإذا نوى المسافر إقامة أكثر من 4 أيام في أي مكان كان سواء نوى الإقامة في البر أو نوى الإقامة في البلد فليلزمه أن يتم. That if a person is intending to stay in a place for 4 days, doesn't matter what the place is, whether it's the destination of his holiday, whether it's the destination of the city, the home, or anywhere even in between, like a rest stop. So he comes for a rest stop, but he decides to stay for more than 4 days, then he becomes, we'll say the word now, well actually we're not going to say the word, he says someone intends al-iqama, right? Now I think instead of causing headaches for ourselves later on, I think that the earlier on you start to use Arabic phraseology, then you kind of get out of the problem. Because today I'm going to introduce a new word into the dichotomy of the musafir and the muqim, which we've been translating so far as the traveler and the resident. That's the word we've been using. So you're now going to realize that I don't know, that it's not such a great word, right? What does muqim mean? The muqim is the one who does iqama. What does iqama mean? Iqama is what we say, and when we do the iqama, the adhan has already been given. The adhan comes from, of course, permission, so it allows the prayer to enter and to be prayed. So that's from idhan. وَأَذَانُ مِنَ Allah. Allah says in Surah Tawbah, right? And there is an announcement from Allah, a permission. It is granted from Allah in Surah Tawbah. Adhan itself means that. Idhan means permission, as we said. And so this concept here allows the prayer to start. But the prayer to start proper, and what we say established, when we try to translate the word قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ, what are we translating it as? You'll see that when people try to, explain it, like in a class, they will say, well, qama, qamat comes from qama means to stand, all right? And when something has been stood up, it means it's like been put in place and it's now ready. It's almost like you've made a model and you're finishing touches, and now you can let it kind of stand by itself. So it's now done, dusted. So we say the prayer has been established, the prayer has been established, or the prayer is to be started, or the prayer is ready to go, the prayer is ready to go, whatever. All right. And so when we say muqim, we're basically talking about a person that's settled down, ironically, right? Even though iqam means to stand up, we're kind of saying that the person has sat down. He's established himself. He's kind of settled down. The problem with the English is that when we're saying resident, that doesn't indicate what muqim means, because actually it's better to translate muqim as the not traveler, right? So it should be traveler and then not traveler, because I want to introduce a third word, which is a resident, citizen, national passport holder, a mustawtin. A mustawtin is someone who takes the land that he's hanging around in, his watan, as his, right? So we all know the concept of watan, yeah, in Arabic and in Urdu and every language. And your watan is your land, it's your nation, isn't it, right? And when you are al-mustawtin, you've taken that nation as yours and you are a citizen and a national. In fiqh, we recognize these two as the opposites, not muqim and musafir as the opposites, but the musafir and the mustawtin as the opposites. Does that make sense? So the true resident is actually a citizen, someone who lives in a place, proper, permanent, I don't know what the phrase we're going to use, permanent resident, citizen, national, but that's for mustawtin. And the transient state is the muqim. The muqim is going to be the guy who doesn't live in this area, but he's come to stay for a couple of months, for example. He's not a mustawtin. He doesn't pay taxes, doesn't, get a national insurance number, social security, whatever. You get what I'm saying? But in the absence of having three categories, or the need to discuss three categories, you don't mention that third category, and so you kind of make out like these are the two opposites. But they're not the two opposites. That makes sense, yeah. So think about that. Actually, what Lama says is really good, which it actually confuses the matter. When you go to one of the Gulf countries, to stay there, you need an iqama. Okay, the iqama is effectively a visa, which theoretically is meant to give you full rights, like everybody else. It does give you jack squat rights, yeah. But the point is that it just allows you to be, instead of being just abused, it allows you the right to pay to be abused. That's basically what it means to live in the Gulf, as anyone who's non-Arab. Basically, you pay to be abused, and you theoretically get some rights, but you're getting jack squat rights. Should have got on a tourist visa. So now. The good point that she's making is that actually iqama, in the way that the modern phraseology uses it, is adding some kind of permanency. It's adding a lot more than what we normally would give it. But ironically, anyone in the Arab lands or Middle East would understand straight away the difference between someone who has an iqama and someone who is and as you see, you're going to be saying, well, what you should be saying is someone who's born there, right? Say it, go on, so I can laugh out loud. Just say it so I can laugh out loud. Yeah? It doesn't matter. If you're a Paki, bro, your dad can be born there. Yeah? But you don't have any citizenship. You don't have any national rights. You have no whatever, no passports, no nothing. There are so many of these folks, especially in, of course, we go to Saudi a lot, right? So, all of us, So, you get to see a lot of the Burmese, the Afghan, Pakistan, so many, actually all nations have been there for years and years and years, and also not just being there for years and years, but doing really good things for the economy as well. If you look in the Western countries, right, they might be racist at their own level, but what they recognize is that, what it is, whilst we're being racist towards you, but if you're bringing value to the country, then we're going to give you some kind of payback. We'll give you citizenship, we'll give you some protection, whatever that protection is or not. Whereas in these countries, it doesn't matter whether you bring business and bring culture and you bring, all kinds of stuff. You have to be the racist ethnic divide is astonishing, actually. But anyway, so iqama is indicating some kind of, in the lands, some kind of permanency, but it's not. Everybody knows it's not, and neither should you be thinking like a Westerner. When you hear the visa and you hear like, going to stay here for a long time, don't be thinking. Anyway.
What about the Afghanism itself, for example, a similar example?
Yeah, so what was their situation? I think no. I think they were given like a special despised status. I don't think that's their national policy, by the way.
The Rohingyas got some passport
Have they? Did you say? I don't know. I don't understand I don't know the details of that the politics of that area, whether it's meant to be Bengali or whether it's meant to be whatever. I don't know. But on the Pakistani thing, it's interesting you say that. I don't know. Oh, yeah. But that has more to do with politics than it has to do with their refugee policy. I think traditionally and like through other more legal means, normative means I should say, you do have the right to get citizenship or whatever. But I think these people, they're being made an example of, they're being treated in a certain way. It is the reason it's been such an uproar is because everyone knows it's being done illegally. What's being done to them, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Just on the point you made about this country being better.
Yep.
There is currently going through Parliament a proposal on the new Nationality and Borders Bill,
Right.
which means the UK government can remove anyone who it deems to be doing anything unacceptable. That's basically unacceptable behaviour is the phrase, which is so vague and loose. So anyone protesting, saying anything, technically you can have your citizenship revoked.
But am I not right in saying that they've been trying to do that for quite a while?
They have, but traditionally before the threshold was much higher.
Right.
This is now much lower. Very vague. Basically anything can come into that category, can't it?
Yeah.
Like anything you say, for example.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Cheers.
Just thought that you know.
I just want you to say I'm the only guy who cried over the Queen dying. I'm the only guy. I'm the only guy who wanted actively to be recognized. I'm her only true patriot amongst you bunch of
That's
packies.
what I'm going to say to you, by the way.
That's the problem. That's the problem. Wasted tears, wasted energy, wasted dreams. The tea party, I'd be sitting there thinking, what would I wear? What would I say? What would I say to Liz? What would my conversation be? What would I do? Well, that's sad news, to be honest. Anyway, so where does this whole how do we try to understand then when a person is actually considered to be in their journey a traveler? We've already understood, right, that there's a linguistic understanding that when you're out your comfort zone and a bit away from your house, you're on a journey. All right. Then we said, well, how do we know that he's not just going to Cheetham Hill? How do we know? So then we gave a distance, and we said the distance has got to be enough to be considered to be out of the city, out of the town. Some are saying 50 miles, 48 miles, but it's got to be something, significant. We're happy with that. And then the third way is to know that you're going somewhere outside of home for a proper significant period of time. And the concept of a significant period of time, now, again, if we left it to the people, it would be absolute mayhem trying to work it out. And so the scholars all chose their own numbers. And we're going to now spend today trying to work out the basis for those type of numbers. Yeah. So back to the point I was just saying about what would be an example of al-iqama, a person who's muqim, not in a city, would be, he gives the example of someone who's just traveling. This is, when you read some of this stuff, it's just pure urtrul kind of stuff, right? So, you're just doing your little kind of traverse over the fields and over the mountains, and then you stop near a stream, but you just realize that this stream is actually a lot nicer than you thought. So you decide to stay there 5 days, because that's what you do when you see a stream, right? And so he hangs around for 5 days, and so according to the Hanbalis, you will then complete your prayer from the day you arrive, because you look at the stream and you say, you know what, I'm tired, I want to rest, I want to allow the horses to fuel up, I want, blah, blah, blah. So I want to hang around here for 5 days. Then from day one, you start praying the full prayer, because you know that you're going to be there for longer than 4 days. All right? It's because you're going to be a resident. All right? Quote unquote. You're going to be a muqim. You're going to have iqama in this area. So the iqamah, doesn't matter where you make the iqamah, it's just that you've now stopped the state of travel, stopped the state of movement as such. Okay? What's the evidence for 4 days? Let's start with that. Why is it that so many scholars went for the idea of 4 days? They said because the Prophet ﷺ, when he came to Mecca, when he did Hajjatul Wada', the final, I mean, it was his only Hajj, but it was the farewell Hajj, if you want to call it, yeah? And when he was doing that, he arrived on the 4th of Dhul Hijjah. The 4th of Dhul Hijjah. And that was a Sunday. So he arrives to Mecca on the Sunday. He stays there the Sunday, the Monday, the Tuesday, and the Wednesday. That's 4 days, including the day that he arrives to Mecca. And then he moves out on the Thursday to Mina. Okay? And that's the 5th of Dhul Hijjah, which is actually similar to what we do in our program. In our program, we do almost exactly the same, except that we don't come to Mecca on the 4th. We leave Mecca on the 4th and we go to our base camp, which is actually, scrap that, it's exactly the same because it's still in Mecca, right? So we then go to our camp to prepare for these 4 days, and then on the end of that 4th day, sometimes we go the night of the 3rd, and so therefore it becomes exactly like this. So on the 5th of our days of staying, we go out to our tents in Mina, because that's when Hajj is now really on. And so the period of preparation in the camp, in the retreat, if you like, that's like the same period that the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba did when they were living around the Kaaba in their tents, basically in Mecca, holding on until the right day, what's called Yawm al-Tarwiyah, the day that you actually go out to Mina, was to come around. 4 days. The key is that during this period of time, the Prophet ﷺ was making qasr. So he's traveled from Medina, and he's now in Mecca, but they are proper stationary. And on the entire journey, he has not stopped like this. So it's been all movement all the way, right? But now he's stopped, and he's settled down, and they've pitched up. And despite pitching up properly, because it was 4 days, he then he prayed qasr, and therefore they said that's why it's qasr for 4 days. That's their argument, right? Also, Sheikh Muhammad Mukhtar al-Shanqiti, alayhi hafidhahullah, he said something which is interesting as well. He said also, if you look at the seerah, if you look at the Prophet ﷺ, I don't know whether you guys, how much you studied the seerah, but you'll know that the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't want the Sahaba, after they done the hijrah, to go back to Mecca, right? It was an izzat thing. It was a political thing more than anything else. It was also a state of war thing, right? And like we know the names of the individual Sahaba, like Sa'ad ibn Khawla, for example, radiallahu an, who became Muslim and didn't do the hijrah and remained in Mecca. Like we can name the individuals. Like there were so few, because it was so shocking to be considered to do that, right? To consider to do that. And the Prophet ﷺ, of course, famous hadith in which he spoke about Sa'ad as well. And, Sa'ad, he kind of like lamented. That's the word. He lamented over Sa'ad, like that he didn't get out, he didn't come. And it wasn't because he was ill or anything like that. And what do we find from some of the narrations? That he didn't allow the Sahaba to stay, the Muhajirin, the people who had left. This wasn't an instruction to the Ansar, but this was an instruction to the Muhajirin, meaning the people who had left Mecca and done the Hijrah, that when they came back to Mecca for any reason, like for example as part of the Hajj or part of an expedition or whatever, that they're not to stay for more than 3 days. And the idea that Muhammad Mukhtar al-Shanqiti is saying is that, well, as we all know, actually it's well common knowledge that the Prophet ﷺ didn't want people to be going back and to be hanging around there. But the 3 days point is a significant point, because according to this opinion, the idea of being 4 days is like that, just long enough to now become comfortable at home, quote unquote. And whilst you're still there for only 3 days, then you're in a clear safe zone as a traveler. Doesn't matter how comfortable you are, doesn't matter how much chilling you are, but you're only there for a place for 3 days. It's such a short period of time, relatively speaking. You're going to get off, and therefore you're going to maintain your position as traveler. And like I said, the politics is probably more the play here, because anyone looking at that, just the culture at the time, they see someone only stay for 3 days, they know that these people have no intention of hanging around as well. So there's lots of different things going on. So you can see now where the 4 days comes from. But you can also see that these evidences are not very direct, are they? They're not very clear, are they? And Sheikh Uthaymeen, he says, if a person was to say, and clearly the Prophet ﷺ coming and doing that, coming out 4 days beforehand, that was clearly, he could have left. Of course he could have left, right? He could have gone earlier, but he decided when he had come to stay there. And when we're studying the what he did during this period of time, it's clear that he's shortening. So that's the ruling that we go by. He goes, what if a person says, did this happen intentionally from the Prophet ﷺ, or did it just happen? Is it قصدا أو اتفاقا? Did he do it like intending to come exactly on this day and to stay exactly 4 days in Mecca, because 4 days is what you got to stay in Mecca before you go to Mina, or did it just work out like that? Right? Now, just want to see a poll of hands. Who thinks it just worked out like that? Who thinks it just happened like that? And who thinks that, no, the Prophet ﷺ wanted to spend 4 days in Mecca? That's surprising. Because if you think about it, if he did that, then that would itself now then become a nusuk. It would become a ritual of Hajj, right? And of course that's not the case. So as he says, there's absolutely no doubt, bila shak, that his journey and his arrival was completely random, spontaneous, what? By chance, yeah, spontaneous, random, whatever the word is, by coincidence, whatever it was. It wasn't intended to be for 4 days. It just happened that he arrives on that Sunday. He didn't intend to arrive on a Sunday. It's not a sunnah to arrive on the Sunday. It's not a sunnah to arrive on a Tuesday. It's not a sunnah that if you arrive on a Sunday, you have to wait before you leave on the Thursday. None of that. It just worked out that when he arrived, it worked out that it was going to be the 4th of Dhul Hijjah, and we do not have anything narrated from him to indicate otherwise. And that's what we should be assuming in this case, Sheikh says. And this is just like any other a person on a journey, right? And so therefore, he goes, so if therefore a person then says, then is it not possible to say, well, what if he had stayed 5 days? What if he had arrived on the 3rd of Dhul Hijjah, for example, and he had left on the 8th for Mina, and so therefore that's 5 days, and if he لو أقام 5 أيام أو أكثر يقصر ما دمتم قلتم إنه وقع اتفاقا لا قصدا. So he said that, what happens in that scenario? Is that now, something to be included as well? Shaykh Uthaymeen says that the asl is that when the musafir stops for he breaks his journey, that's when he becomes a muqim. When he removes his state of journeying, that's when he becomes a muqim. He goes, it's well known that if a person stops for an afternoon or for an evening, that's quite normal for a person. Actually, that's a pit stop, isn't it? You go and see some rallies, you go for a bite in Birmingham, you go, do some X, you do a few things on the way, and you might stop for like a day even, or certainly a good few hours. Nobody says that this person's lost his position or state as musafir. But if a person settles down, is chilling out, I'm staying a week, I'm going to stay 2, I'm going to be with family, now he's lost his state of safar, right? Because this is now opposite to what the de facto kind of position is. فالأصل أن المسافر إذا أقام في البلد أو في المكان غير البلد أن إقامته تقطع سفر. So he goes that that actually if a person hangs around a bit, maybe a day or two, we'll say, right, this is now, he's properly stopped journeying, even a day or two. But he then says, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has almost, out of his charity, extended that period of time to 4 days, right? Giving it like a little bit more than, because you wouldn't normally need a person to have to stay 4 days before you say that this guy is not traveling anymore. If he stayed even 1 or 2 nights, you'd say, yeah, the guy settled down for, a period of time. And so this is an important point here, by the way, that there's clearly more than just technical facts here, even though it's clear that we can't establish technical facts because we can't agree on them anyway. And then it's almost then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has then, through the action of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, kind of made it a little bit more by the action of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam doing, shortening the prayer for longer than 1 day or 2 days, and for shortening the fact that he showed it for 4 days, then it means that we're allowed to then use all of the concessions. Sorry, Ashmaila, and then Hamza. What we're talking about is qasr generally. The example, of course, we gave it is Makkah, yes. Yeah, the example we're giving is Makkah, yeah.
Just curious what happened at the Hajj before when Abu Bakr was said. What was the timing then? Was it similar? Just to give those 4 days again, then that might.
Well, that's a good question. And to be honest, I don't know the date that he arrived. I don't know. What's more important than that, if you didn't hear the question being asked, Hamza said that, do we have any kind of evidence from the Hajj of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq? Of course, the Prophet ﷺ made wida, but before him, when Abu Bakr went, what's more important is that what would the value of his statement be anyway in the presence of the Prophet ﷺ? You know what I'm saying? The value of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and his rulings only are after the death of the Prophet ﷺ.
Not just in that he would have sent him with the timeline.
So yes, so if you're talking about a timeline, then we do know, no doubt, that it's a sunnah to arrive in Mina on the 8th. So we know that happened. What we don't know, though, is when he came to Mecca. I mean, maybe we do know, the scholars know, I certainly don't know. Yeah. Right. So Sheikh says that, this person, all of these things that a person can use as a concession as a musafir, wiping over the sock for 3 days, the shortening of the prayer, etc., not having to fast if it's Ramadan, etc. All of these things are open to him except for missing Jum'ah. Jum'ah has to be attended. This is what Shaykh Uthaymeen says. He goes that as a traveller, and this is of course is a strong position, not the position of the majority, but is a strong position that even the traveller has to attend the Jum'ah prayer, which in my heart I find difficult, but that's kind of, whatever. And but he is very clear. He says that this is for attending, not as an imam and not as a khatib. And this is a very well-held position amongst the scholars of fiqh, right? And the irony, of course, is that in modern day kind of fiqh, it's the exact opposite. We want to bring in a celebrity speaker to give like the khutbah, the guy who's only here for some kind of charity event, or is visiting the city for the weekend. Please come early and give the khutbah. The irony is that he is least qualified to give the khutbah, right? And there's one thing arguing against it because of the interests of the people, which is ironic because actually the whole concept of Jum'ah, we haven't done Jum'ah, have we? That's coming, isn't it? Yeah, that's coming. Oh yeah, of course, that's coming later. The whole concept of Jum'ah historically is a fascinating subject to watch how it changed from Arabic only to scholars completely refusing it to remove its Arabic language requirement, to people that had no idea of Arabic, to then the creation historically of 2 sections, a non-Arabic part, bayan, as you know, yeah, and then the Arabic one, to what we have today where anything goes. You can get up here and you got people who come up and give us the 1 o'clock news, right? And they don't know wala ayah wala hadith, they can't recite wala shay, right? And their recitation's terrible, the khutbah's just appalling, and just catastrophic a presentation of this nonsense, unqualified. And the irony is that that's all been allowed by scholars. Look at the timing of Jum'ah in the classic times, and to what kind of fatwas we use now with respect to kind of because of us living in the western high latitudes, starting early, for example, before Dhuhr has even started. So certainly the guys that are online from Alberta and the like will know about that. That fatwa is quite well used. Yeah. Whether we're talking about the concept of multiple Jum'ahs, can you imagine this would be absolutely anathema in the Muslim lands and the Muslim state? The whole concept of Jum'ah is that it happens in the Jami' Masjid, the big masjid. All the small masajid close down. You're not allowed to give a Jum'ah. Everyone gets pushed to the big one to have this massive community event. Whereas in our one, it's like in MRI, the hospital, we'll have a Jum'ah, we'll have it in factories, we'll have it in schools, which I have a big problem with all of these. You know, my own personal position is that why is Jum'ah happening on all of these places? It should be Dhuhr only. And then you've got masajid having 2 and then 3, and there's only 1 meant to be prayed. That's because circumstances. And it just goes to show that if there was anything as a case study from a fiqh point of view of how things develop and how flexibility is required because of change of scenario and situation, Jum'ah is your perfect case study in all of its ways. Whether it's who leads it, who prays it, how many times, the location, the nature of who's actually praying and what constitutes a legal prayer. Because you know that when they say the minimum number for the Jum'ah to go ahead is either 40 or either X or either 3, but 3 is not, then they start asking you the questions, okay, quiz, you got 6 ladies, 1 kid and 1 imam. Is it a valid Jum'ah? And everyone says yes, and the answer is no, because the women don't count and the kids don't count. You know, this kind of stuff. It's remarkable, actually, when you see the way that Jum'ah has a thing. And so for this point of view here, he said, I just finished this point, he goes, that he must attend the Jum'ah. He cannot be counted as one of the people who are the residents to calculate the minimum number because he's not from the residence. And he cannot be the khatib, he cannot be the imam. It doesn't get dropped from him. He must attend it. It's obligatory upon him. And this is the way that this one goes. And then Sheikh says but this is obviously the Hanbali position, massive difference of opinion. He goes, there are 20 opinions. 20 opinions on what's the length of time that you stay in a place before you need to oblige to pray full and not do qasr. And now he's going to start discussing them. Yeah.
But in that case,
which case?
In the case of someone travelling and they're required to pray Jum'ah.
Yes.
What if you're actually in the physical process of travelling itself? You're on the motorway, for example.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're asking me, then you don't need to pray Jum'ah. But obviously, this is just Shaykh Uthaymeen just making a side comment. He's going to obviously deal with that properly in the section of Jum'ah. Marina says, isn't a lot of this subjectively derived? What is this, Marina? If you mean the fiqh of traveling, and absolutely. If you stop for 5 days, how that's perceived, maybe, absolutely. And that's what we're going to be done. Hadith says that in regards to arriving on Sunday, I thought anything that the Prophet ﷺ did to copy was a sunnah unless there was a counter evidence. Not necessarily, no. And we've covered that in quite a bit of detail. But yeah, in certain times and aspects there is. That is the case. So yeah, anyway. So he goes, right, let's go with the first position on this. The one that we're dealing with right now is the madhab of the Hanabila. I think I mentioned this last week, that I can't remember when he actually went through the different positions of madhab like this. So this is the matter here on the bottom of 374. He goes, as for the Hanabila, may Allah have mercy upon them, then he goes, just like we said before, if a person intends to stay in a place for more than 4 days, then he's lost his now status of traveler and he must now complete the prayer. But he doesn't lose his state. He doesn't lose his state with respect to the Jum'ah prayer. And by that, what he means is that he's still not a muqim, to be counted as part of the minimum number for Jum'ah. He's got to attend it. So they're basically saying that If you stay in a place for longer than 4 days, you've lost your state of traveler. You're no longer a traveler. You are a resident, but actually you're a pseudo-resident. So you're a resident in that you've got to pray full and you can't do masah over your socks for more than 1 day, and you've got to fast and all the rest of it. But when you go to Jum'ah prayer, you still can't count yourself as one of the Jama'ah. You're still a foreigner, quote unquote, to the Jama'ah. Why? Because as all of the fuqaha said, for Jum'ah to count as one, to get the minimum number, you have to be a Mustawtin. Now I want you to understand now, and obviously we're not going to cover this now, Jum'ah, that's coming in whenever it comes. But this is why I have a problem with, and I shouldn't be talking about it too much now, but I just want to introduce it to your head now. This is why I don't like the idea of workers doing Jum'ah and hospitals doing Jum'ah, and Jum'ah is being put up in a temporary whatever. Because people are thinking that it's the prayer which is so important, as opposed to the overall combined reality of residents being held accountable for what they're doing and got to turn up to something that shows that they're getting a bit of their deen in a proper kind of way, along with their community, bit of accountability, showing your face. You know, there's lots of things happening in the Jum'ah prayer, not just the prayer itself. And it's no surprise that they don't therefore include the women in it, because women wouldn't normally be in the masjid, right? So where's their accountability? And it doesn't mean the kids, because kids don't go to the masjid. And they're not including musafirin because they don't count anyway, aslan. So the Mustawtin makes sense as well. It actually makes kind of sense. So now we're into the concept of the idea now we've got the 3 categories. So therefore, according to this position, right, according to this discussion, we have now 3 states that a person can be in. He is either musafir, or he's either mustawtin, or he is a muqim, ghayr mustawtin. So you might want to say he's not traveler, not resident, or he is resident, and we give mustawtin another title. What are we saying title? Citizen? What does citizen mean? Permanent resident? Temporary resident and permanent resident? Yeah, I'm okay with that. Permanent resident. So permanent resident is the yeah, I like permanent resident. Yeah. So فالمسافر أحكام السفر في حقه ثابتة والمستوطن أحكام الاستيطان في حقه ثابتة ولا يستثني من هذا شيء والمقيم غير المستوطن. Okay, so we now have these 3. Now Sheikh quotes, and he says that obviously all 3 of these categories have separate kind of states and separate rules. You can be included for Jum'ah, you can't be included for Jum'ah, can't be included for Jum'ah, you get the status of X, you can continue combining or shortening the prayer for ages, you can't, you can, giving out these different kind of characteristics of each state. And Sheikh says that, as Ibn Taymiyyah said, there's not a single evidence from the Quran or the Sunnah to be dealing out these various kind of grades and levels and details for each of these states, let alone dividing people into these states. So there's, Ibn Taymiyyah coming in and just like throwing all the chess pieces off the table, saying, I'm not playing this game, right? So we'll come back to that afterwards. Hadith says that if you Google resident, it's a person who lives somewhere permanently or on a long-term basis. Yeah. I mean, resident is too much of a strong word, right? It is a strong word. You know what I mean? Just take out this charger for me. Oh, is that? Yeah. Nazif, pull out this charger, bring it to me. The Mac charger, stick it in here, yeah? So, that's that. As for the Shafi'i, what's his position? He says that if a person intends to be in a place for longer than 4 days, okay, and when I say longer than 4 days, he's not including the day that you arrive and the day that you leave. So the day of arrival and day of departure is not included. So almost like 6 days, basically. That's plenty long. Yeah, that's fine. Just that. Then he is to be considered to be the muqim if he stays for longer than 6. If he does that. If he comes and he stays for less than 4 days. So for example, if he stays for 4 days but he leaves on the 4th day, or he comes on one day and he stays for 4th day and he leaves, that it's like 5 days, all of these in his count will be less than the period for becoming a resident. So he's still a musafir, and so from the very beginning of that time, as Farhan asked, he's going to be shortening the prayer. This is important to remember, that it's all about your intention, right? And all of this chapter, by the way, is dependent upon what? Knowing that you are going to be hanging about. If there's a person who doesn't know what's about to happen, then actually all of the scholars are in agreement that this person has the right to shorten for as long as he wants, even if it's years. And there are many examples of Sahaba in history that happened to. And of course, you got to understand, then it makes a lot of sense. Like when you are planning to leave and then you find that there's a roadblock, a mudslide, a heavy snow, you have absolutely no idea when it's going to thaw. Are we going to break through? Are we not? But I want to get out. And I have every intention to leave. And even if I know that this is going to take weeks and things, I don't want to stay and I'm going to keep trying to get out. So it doesn't matter, even if you know that you're going to be stuck for a month or two, but your intention is to keep getting out, If I get the chance, I'm getting out. You can shorten for the entire period of time. So this is not referring to that person. In our modern time, there are people like that as well. There are people who might come to an area and they're like, yeah, the situation is, I've got a flexible ticket. I might go here, I might go there, I might leave this time, but I'm moving around. They're not stuck in one place. For example, people go to Pakistan, they say, I'm going for a month. And they say, right, well, that's longer than if you're Pak, 15 days, and if you're Hanbali, then 4 days, right? And they're like, oh, so clearly I'm a resident. But if a person's going to his mommy's house on this day, his Jaja's house on that day, and he's staying at Thingy in the Gulf for 3 days, then he's going to there, he's moving around, right? If the situation is flexible, he's in the hands of his hosts, and the matter is flexible, and so he's going to be shortening all the time. So it's important to understand the micro aspects of a longer period of time as well. What we're talking about is a person who goes from one place to another, knowing that he's going to hang around there for a period of time. If you know it's going to be a significant time, tell us how long you think it is, then let's determine what that should be. So we know the Hanbali said 4 days straight, 20 prayers. The Shafi'i said 4 days with a day separate for the arrival and a day separate for leaving. Abu Hanifa, the madhab of Abu Hanifa, they said 15 days. This is of course very popular, very famous. Every pack knows that. And so therefore it's very flexible for their folks. That means that person goes and knows that I'm going to be there for 2 weeks. Then from day one, he's shortening the prayer because he knows I'm only there for 2 weeks. Whereas if you're a pack, Hanafi, and you know that you're going for 18 days, then from the first second that you arrive, you're praying full, completely like everybody else, because you are staying longer than the activating period. The activating period, according to Hanafis, is not 4 days, it's not 6 days, it's 15 days. Where does 15 days come from? Well, it's actually, the irony, like me looking in, from the outside, I find the 15-day approach has more basis than the 4 and the 5 and 6 day approach. And that is because when you see their discussions, the Hanafis, they're basically going with 15 because of the presence of so many other evidences that the Prophet ﷺ shortened the prayer for longer than 4 days. Now, the irony, of course, is that you give me that kind of information, I'm taking a different approach, whereas the Hanafi school, they took that information, they took a different approach. So if you say to me, the Prophet ﷺ, he went and left Medina, as the famous hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, and he was away for 10 days. 10 days. And for 10 days, he was out of Medina and he shortened his prayer. Hadith Bukhari and Muslim. And then we have, in the Sunan of Al-Bayhaqi, we know that the Prophet ﷺ, when he went to Tabuk, and Tabuk, he got held up. The situation went wrong, right? The way that military expedition was meant to happen didn't happen. And some said that he was there for 11 days, some said 15, some said 19, but somewhere in between 11 and 19 days that happened, right? And all the way during that period of time, he prayed shortened. Now, I'm going to add an asterisk here. We already have said that the scholars are quite comfortable explaining away Tabuk. Why? Just like I said a minute ago, when you go to a place with no intention to stay there and end up staying there, that's something different. That's something different, right? And that's pretty clear everybody knows that that was the case. The Prophet ﷺ had no intention to hang around for 19 days. It so happened that it turned out to be not a great situation, and therefore, as a result, that's what happens. Yeah, anyway. So, and then, Abdullah ibn Umar, radiallahu anhuma, he has a couple of narrations, some narrated by Muhammad bin Hassan, of course, is biased, yani is the Hanafi school founder, if you like, yeah, student of Abu Hanifa, in his own book Al-Athar, but also narrated by Ibn Abi Shaybah in the Musannaf. So you do find a lot of riwayat in the Musannaf that he shortened, or he completed the prayer after 15 days. And then he said, if you're going to a place for 15 days, and then afterwards, then you complete the prayer. So therefore, when you say that, that means less than 15 days means you're good. Right? You shorten the prayer. So as I said, you've got two approaches when you got this kind of evidences in front of you. You are either going to say, well, clearly 10 and 9 and 11 and X and Y and Z show that it's not 4 days. And then Abdullah bin Umar is so forcefully saying 15 and acting on 15 would indicate that 15 is a good answer to go with. Our response will be, well, how's that explain the 10-day thing? And how does that explain 11? And how does that explain 19? And how does it explain that some of these narrations are weak? And how does it explain that we know from Abdullah bin Umar that he shortened for different periods of time, and that we have other companions that also had different periods of time? Right? So we've taken two entirely different directions. So the Hanafis like to be on the safe side, have said, you know what? It's a nice long period of time. We'll just stick to it. We're going to take 15. And you know what? You can't argue with it. You can't. Because there's no primary evidence. And then what's the other alternative? Well, Shaykh Uthaymeen says, he goes, if we go back to, he goes, and obviously there are so many different other individual opinions as well, different madhahib positions. For example, the opinion of Abdullah ibn Abbas, strongly narrated from him, so much so that it's known as the Ibn Abbas approach, is 19 days. So 19 days is qasr. So if you do more than 19 days, then you are praying full. He goes, Sheikh says at the bottom of 375, he goes, if we go back to the Kitab wa Sunnah, okay, we find actually what Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah said, that is the correct position, not these that we've just seen above. It's all subjective, it's all speculative, it's all everyone trying to give it the best guess. But what Ibn Taymiyyah put forward, and Allah knows best, is the strongest position. And that is, huwa anna al-musafir musafir. That the one who is a traveler is a traveler. Meaning the traveler knows when he's a traveler. Sawa'un, regardless of whether he intends to stay for longer than 4 days or less than 4 days. When a traveler feels that he's not a traveler anymore, he's now become a resident. He's now become a muqim. Now we spoke a lot about this last week, right? And I don't know whether you guys looked at the chat, but it was Shahab from London. He wrote a comment that I noticed like not many people kind of either understood or reacted to, and it was very well said. Actually, go back and see it from last week. And he was postulating that one of the reasons, effectively what we said in the class, which is that sometimes scholars, when they realize that people don't have a connection with the Arabic language, they would rather become more formulaic and more stricter to give them something which they don't have that much time to, not give them the headache of trying to work it out themselves, which is what we were kind of basically saying, right? And he summarized it nicely in a paragraph or two. And obviously, you give someone who's confident in their deen, right, this tool, then it's like, a weight off your chest. This is the deen, this is Islam, and you know what I mean? People are like, this is what I signed up for, this is why I'm Muslim, Whereas you give it to the majority of people, they're like, Ras, man, just told me 4 days. I'm like, you know what I mean? Like you're seeing the questions here, like you got questions here, like when does a 4 day start? Is it the first, is it the 5th day? Is it Fajr on the 5th day? Is it, if it's 15 days, then does the first day start when I get there, or is it when I'm at home? Don't ask me, I've got no idea. Right? So this is the problem when you give numbers. This is the problem when you start putting in, when you start calibrating and start putting limits in where Allah didn't. and where the Prophet ﷺ didn't. You cause your own headache. You cause your own headache. And it's a compelling argument. It really is a compelling argument. Let's now look to see what Sheikh says. He goes that a musafir is a musafir, and that's the end of it. This is because ولذلك العموم الأدلة الدالة على ثبوت رخص السفر للمسافر بدون تحديد. And that's because the evidences, when you look at them generally point to the fact that all of the concessions that are applicable for the musafir are without restriction. There is no restriction to these concessions. Restriction meaning you got to travel this distance before you can take the concession, and you got to stay this long, or at least this long, or you got to be more than this long before you can enjoy the concessions. The concessions are for the musafir, and as long as you think you are musafir, then you are going to get your concession and you're going to enjoy it. And it has not been limited or defined by Allah in His book, neither by His Messenger ﷺ, as any kind of time, in any kind of way. Some of the evidences we can use to support our position, we're going to call it our position because it is the class position, and it is Shaykh Uthaymeen's position, and it is a lot of the modern day scholars' positions, like Ibn al-Qayyim and like Sa'adi, Shaykh Uthaymeen's teacher, and like a lot of the kind of the modern day kind of folks. The first one is from the Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An-Nisa, verse 101, وَإِذَا ضَرَبَتُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ فَلَيْسَ عَلَيْكُمْ جُنَاحٌ أَن تَقْصُرُوا مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ. And so when you go forth, ضَرَبْتُمْ, yani when you go set out, yani darb is hit, isn't it? Yani when you strike that path, when you're like boom, out on the way and you're the beaten path. You know we say the beaten path, yeah? You've beaten the path, you've properly gone on your way. And when you set out into the world, then there is absolutely no blame upon you if you shorten your prayer. So he goes, وَإِذَا ضَرَبْتُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. He says that when Allah says, once you've set out, He's made it general for كُلَّ ضَارِب. He's made it general for everyone who sets off. Whatever way, however long. وَمِنَ الْمَعْلُومِ أَنَّ الضَّرْبَ فِي الْأَرْضِ أَحْيَانًا يَحْتَاجُ إِلَى مُدَّةٍ طَوِيلَةٍ بِحَسْبِ حَاجَتِهِ. He goes, it's known that when sometimes a person goes out and makes his darb, takes the beaten path, sometimes it needs a long period of time. As Allah tells us in Surah Al-Muzammil, وَآخَرُونَ يَضْرِبُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ يَبْتَغُونَ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ يَبْتَغُونَ مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ. Right? Surah Al-Muzammil, verse 20. And there are others who set out in the land who are only seeking the grace of Allah. This فَالَّذِينَ يَضْرِبُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ لِلتِّجَارَةِ مَثَلًا. This is referring to people who go out for business and traders. And these people go out for months. So the word darb has been used. See, يَضْرِبُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Those who set out on the path. And other times, and so Shaykh goes, هل يكفيهم أن يقيموا أربعة أيام فأقل في البلد? Is it right to say that this guy, he's only got 4 days for his status of traveler? And we're sending, and Allah says that when he makes darb in the land to go and seek from the grace of Allah and the wealth that he wants and the rizq, that he's only got his concessions for 4 days. When he's making deals here, making deals there, whatever, whatnot. He's not a resident. He's not chilling. He's got work. He needs to be enjoying the concessions that he's been given. Sheikh says, رُبَّمَا يَكْفِيهِمْ وَرُبَّمَا لَا يَكْفِيهِمْ. It might be enough. Modern day could be enough in it, 4 days to get the job done. But sometimes in other industries, it might not be. فَالتَّاجِرْ قَدْ يَكْفِي. It's possible that 1 day is enough for him, and sometimes he needs 10 days, and sometimes he needs stock and he doesn't get it, and he's got to gather it together, etc., etc. So we shouldn't put a restriction on the darb, because that ayah in Surah An-Nisa is the fundamental ayah that establishes even the principle of shortening the prayer, and a general phrase, why are you restricting it to 4 days, 3 days, 6 days, 15 days? This is the starting point as a evidence, okay? The second thing, he goes, the second point, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أقام مددا مختلفة يقصر فيها فأقام في تابوك 20 يوم يقصر صلاة. From the action of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, approximately 20 days he went out for, as narrated by Imam Ahmad, okay? And also the hadith is good, inshallah, volume 3, hadith number 294, that he stayed for 20 days. and also وأقام في مكة عام حجة الوداع 10 أيام يقصر الصلاة. And in the final Hajj, the farewell Hajj, in total, Makkah, Mina, everything, put it all together, he was there for 10 days and he shortened the prayer. So 20 days in Tabuk, 10 days from him in the Hajj. And Anas radiallahu an, when he was asked, how many days did you stay in Mecca in the farewell sermon? He goes, أقمنا بها 10. We remained here for 10. We remained there for 10 days. Narrated Bukhari, hadith number 1081. And so look at these days. Yeah, they're not 4, they're not 15, they're not the rest of it. Yeah. Sheikh says, what if a person says, what do you say? ما تقولون في حجة من رأى أنه إذا أقام أكثر من 4 أيام لزم الإتمام وهو أن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم أقام 4 أيام قبل أن يخرج إلى منى. He says, what do you say about the argument of those that see that if you stay longer than the 4 days, just like the Prophet ﷺ came on the 4th and then he left on the 8th, and yes, we accept that he shortened for those 4 days. So therefore, let's take 4 days, and anything other than 4 days, we should then be praying full. Shaykh Uthaymeen says, this is an evidence against them and not for them. This is هذا دليل عليهم وليس دليلا لهم. لأن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم because the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم entered into Mecca on the 4th of Dhul Hijjah, just like that, spontaneously. ولا أحد يشك في هذا. Anyone who tries to deny this, can't be taken seriously. Absolutely no doubt that he didn't intend to arrive on this exact day. So like I want you to understand that he didn't time his arrival. And this is important. You asked, was it you? No, it was Haris that said, surely the action of the Prophet ﷺ is to be taken as a sunnah. Well, here's how what was taken as a sunnah. When you're in Mecca and you got to go to Mina, which is like 3 miles away, 4 miles away, and it's within an hour's walk, that's you're in control, right? So you're making your start point and you're saying, we're here, we're going to go there, right? And you give a reason for it, and then you show the actions for it, and then the ummah then doesn't stop doing it. It becomes clear that this is a sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Someone might turn around and say, why isn't it obligatory? Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ didn't say it's obligatory to go to Mina. That's why many people, we used to call it the businessman Hajj. They would fly in to Jeddah, like these people who literally only come in for 4 days to do their Hajj. They don't even bother going to Mina at all, right? At all. They fly in on the 9th morning, day of Arafah, to Jeddah, and they basically drive then from the morning to Arafah, and they get to Arafah for the afternoon. They spend the Arafah there until Maghrib. Then they come out. They spend the night in Muzdalifah. This is them doing it properly, by the way. This is not even the blag way. If I talk to you about the blags, then you'll lose your mind. What they do, right? They'll only stay like 1 minute in Muzdalifah until it's midnight. Then they'll say, right, half the night's gone. Then they'll go to Mecca and they'll say, yeah, I need a little bit of ease. Blah blah blah. They'll combine 1 night, 2 nights. They only spend 1 night in Mina, and they'll do that basically all awake on the edge of Mecca and Mina, and then they'll get off. And I'm talking about doing it properly. So they'll come, they'll do Arafah, they'll spend the night in Muzdalifah, then they'll go on to where? Then they'll go and stone, and they'll go and do the tawaf proper, and then they will actually spend 2 nights in Mina, and then they'll do their tawaf, whatever. In 4 days they've done the entire full Hajj. Because actually the Prophet ﷺ never verbally said that you must come to Mina on the Yawm al-Tarwiyah. But his action and the action of the Sahaba in insisting upon that all the time makes it clear that it's a sunnah from him. However, never has anyone ever from the Sahaba or the Salaf ever said that his arrival to Mecca is the same sunnah. Because even aqlan, can you imagine a person trying to time walking for 11 days, 10 days, don't know what the condition's going to be, that you're going to arrive absolutely perfectly on the exact day that you want to arrive. You don't know, what the situation's going to be. We're still at war with so many people, right? There's all kinds of situations that could occur. Anyway, the point is that this was اتفاقا, it's not something that happened, intentionally. So he goes, وهل هناك دليل على أنه لو قدم في اليوم الثالث atam, he goes that what if he had arrived on the Tuesday? If he had arrived on the Tuesday as opposed to the Sunday, do you have any evidence that he would have shortened or fulfilled? Like, your evidence is entirely speculative. You're just guessing what if. Then we can also say what if. When you don't have anything actually, positive, set to go with, then what can you do? Rather, what do we know? نعلم أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يعلم بأن الناس يقدمون الحج قبل اليوم الرابع. He knows صلى الله عليه وسلم that people are going to come for Hajj and they're going to arrive before the 4th of Dhul Hijjah. Actually, the vast majority of people nowadays do that. Like, for a person to come that late is I don't say rare, but like when we arrive, we always want to get there on the last day of Dhul Qa'dah. That's our target for the last 15, 18, 20, I want to say for the majority of the last 26 years of Hajj, 20 years of which we have done nearly every time we arrive on the 30th of Dhul Qa'dah. And that's when you start to feel, what's happening, right? So he says that, of course, the Prophet ﷺ knew that people are going to come before the 4th. وفي ذي القعدة, he says, وفي شوال لأن أشهر الحج تبدأ من شوال. He goes, what's the point of Allah telling us that the sacred months and the month of Hajj start from Shawwal and Dhul Qa'dah, and suddenly you restricting it to everyone's got to come on the 4th of Dhul Hijjah? Yani 2 months you've just wiped off the market, right? And the 4 extra days, because you're insisting that the Prophet ﷺ intended the 4th intentionally, which is not the case. ولم يقل ولم يقل ولم يقل, correct, and it's not been this is not possible to say that a person that comes before the day of it's not known and not been said the person comes early, then he's got to be completing the prayer. And if the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this the case, then the Prophet ﷺ would have obligated it, he would have made it clear, he would have explained it, because it would have been obligatory upon him to explain this, this point. Absolutely no doubt about it. فَلَمَّا لَمْ يُبَيِّنْ, and so therefore when he didn't do that and he did not clarify and he did not say to the people that whoever came before the 4th, then let him complete the prayer, because he knows that so many are going to come, then we know that it's nothing to do with 4 days. And the fact that he left and they were still shortening was not some kind of hidden proof that the 4 days is the factor. Not at all. إِذَنْ لَا دَلِيلٍ, therefore we can say there is no evidence whatsoever to restrict this traveling distance to 4 days, because the staying of the Prophet ﷺ in Mecca for 4 days just happened like that, not out of legislation. He did not do it tashri'an. He did not do it legislatively. He did not do it to bring a rule. وَهَذِهِ قَاعِدَةٌ, and this is a maxim. وَلِهَذَا لَا يَسْنُ الْحَاجِ إِذَا دَفَعَ من عرفات إلى مزدلفة أن ينزل في الطريق ثم يبول ثم يتوضأ وضوءا خفيفا لأن هذا وقع منه صلى الله عليه وسلم على سبيل الاتفاق. Just like no single scholar has ever said that when you leave Arafah and you're making your way to Muzdalifah, that you've got to then just go to the side and go and pass water, do a number 1 and do a very light wudu before you arrive to Muzdalifah, because that's exactly what the Prophet ﷺ did on his way from Arafah to Muzdalifah. We know that when he came down and he went towards Muzdalifah, short pit stop, and Anas said, quick wudu, he made very small amounts of water wudu, and then onto Muzdalifah. Does anybody say that? No, because it happened as part of the journey, just like his arrival into Mecca happened as part of the journey. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Okay, and then to finish off this point, he goes also, and by the way, that thing that happened, the Prophet ﷺ going to the toilet effectively, that happened in narrated by Imam Muslim, hadith number 1280, hadith Sahih Muslim. أيضا, how are we going to say من نوى الإقامة 96 ساعة فله يقصر ومن نوى. He goes, how are we going to say that a person who intends to stay for exactly 96 hours is the one who's going to complete the prayer, but the one who stays 95 hours and 30 minutes is not going to? The situation starts to become out of control. Okay? That the first guy is a musafir and the second one is not, or whatever it is. Where is this coming from? Where are these restrictions coming from? Where are these definitions coming from in the Kitab and Sunnah? Top of page 378. وَالصَّلَاةُ كَمَا نَعْلَمْ أَعْظَمْ أَرْكَانِ الْإِسْلَامِ. Let's not forget that the prayer is the absolute premier number one pillar of Islam. The absolute number one after the Shahadatain. How can we say to the Ummah that this person, إن هذا الرجل الذي نوى إقامة 96 ساعة, how can we possibly say that a person who's staying for 96 hours or 95 hours and a few minutes, if he shortens his prayer, right, meaning he does it a little bit more than 96 things, then his prayer has been invalidated because he should have prayed it in full? How can we say that, right? Because that's what they're saying effectively. They're saying that after you're staying for 4 days, then you cannot. If you're staying for 96 hours, then you've got to pray your prayer in full. And if you pray your prayer shortened, then you haven't prayed what's obligated upon you, which is 4. He goes, how can we say to the Ummah, for this arkan, yani such a big thing, we're going to bring this haram in? Like, I want you to think, it's a really good point. Today I was asked the question that, what do you think about the person who sells vaping, the vapes things, yeah? Selling it, using it and selling it. And I said that, obviously we should socially create a real thing about this, right? And I've written about this before as well, that obviously because it doesn't have the tar, then you save yourself from that danger compared to smoking. But the danger of vapes is now becoming clearer and clearer due to the chemical stuff that's being inhaled, which was not being, when the NHS and everyone just jumped in, right? They jumped in so cavalier because of the lack of tar, as if tar was the biggest problem. They were like, you know what, the nicotine is the addictive part. So the nicotine is there, it doesn't do much, it's just addictive, and everyone's addicted to something, so let them continue with that. We'll add some fruit and blah blah and let them enjoy it. At least we save them from the tar, which is the major issue, which is the major cancer, and that's right. But they forgot about all the carcinogens that are in all the bakwas that make up the apple flavor and the watermelon flavor and the black whatever it is. Now, so even back then I was like, I was anti when I wrote about it when it started, that we should be avoiding it. But the issue of whether smoking is haram or not is more than just my desires and my belief. I wrote, now going back in the days of the blogs, Islamic blog maybe, or even alternative entertainment even, but in those days, I don't know if you remember, what year did Alex Higgins pass away? Alex Higgins. Don't say he's still alive, that's a pure bestie if it is. Definitely dead, isn't he? Yeah? We need to do Alex Higgins, because this is, I remember this. That long ago? That long ago? There's a whole lot of people who are like, who the hell is Alex Higgins? 2010. So that would fit. Yeah, that would fit. That was alternative entertainment. That was pre-Facebook, I think. Post-Facebook. Okay. Anyway, now I want to show you Alex Higgins throat cancer. Yeah, I want to see a picture. Yes, that's it. Now, obviously we're talking about a generation here, so you won't know. But if you remember Alex Higgins, you know exactly, as soon as you say Alex Higgins, you know exactly what he looks like. Right? Everybody knows what Alex Higgins looks like. It's definitely not that. Okay? Nobody ever remembers Alex Higgins looking like that. Okay? I hope that camera can see it.
You need to go on a bit. Yeah, that's better.
You can see it, yeah?
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, you don't need to be a snooker fan. Although, if you look at Ronnie O'Sullivan, the flipping GOAT of all time, Atlantic Gussam, what a player. I don't know if there's a human on this planet that I like more than Ronnie O'Sullivan, by the way. But anyway. But when you know Alex Higgins, he was a normal guy. Look at his face and look at his thing. He was smoking on a table. He was like, when we were young and you associate smoking, you think of Alex Higgins. He was like doing 100 a day or whatever. And I remember when he died, the kind of level of media that would come out was obviously less censored back then. But the picture of him before he died was everywhere. And I remember writing an article on the blog that I said the people get too caught up in whether something is haram or not, whether the evidence is or not. This picture in itself should show you how haram it is to smoke, sell these, be close to it, be part of it, whatever, whatnot. Sometimes you don't need the Quran and Sunnah to tell you what is right and wrong for a person. Now, I remember saying that then. You know that I've maintained that consistently throughout a number of issues in Islam. A lot of people want to just see the evidences. Sometimes the evidences aren't there. And when the evidences are not directly there and you're always basing things on secondary evidences. So for example, the smoking argument, there isn't a direct evidence, right? What are you going to use? It's addictive substance. Well, so flipping gulab jamun they are, right? They're bloody addictive as well. You start on those bad boys, especially a few flipping scoops of ice cream. Bismillah, Allahu Akbar. All right. They said, لا تقتلوا أنفسكم إن الله كان بكم رحيما. Don't kill yourself. Allah is all merciful with you. So smoking kills you. No, it doesn't. There's plenty of people that don't die of smoking. Some of them get cancer, some don't. Some people survive, right? If you think that smoking kills you, you should see what flipping Krispy Kreme donuts does to does to people with high insulin or whatever, whatnot. Bro, most good things can kill you if you eat it in the amount that people smoke, right? So who's going to be brave enough to make Krispy Kreme haram? Who's going to make Haagen-Dazs haram? Bro, Haagen-Dazs, do you have any idea how many calories are in one Haagen-Dazs tub? How many spoonfuls of sugar or something like that, right? So society wants to go a certain way and try to use aql, but this is dangerous when you want to go and do these things, because you've got to then be ready for whatever. And I hope, and this is why I mentioned to you about the issue of boycotting, right? That when I'm making these arguments, am I promoting smoking? Am I promoting smoking? No. I'm telling you that we are scholars, we are students of knowledge, and you've got to do this properly. You've got to have methodology. However, when you say the same thing about boycotting, you're like, what's this guy? He's anti-Palestinian. You hear what I'm saying? Right? And that's what we expect from the public who don't have any... Jahil, they don't know what's going on. We're saying that, you know what? Be careful about how you throw away the obligation and the prohibition card. It's obligatory to boycott Chevrolet and SodaStream and X and what. Bro, slow down. Say that it's good and that we should all do it and that we're going to shame people who don't do it as some kind of social pressure, blah-de-blah, blah-de-blah. But don't be coming out with the big words, the big guns, because you'll regret it. Because you're going to put upon yourself something that you can't handle at all. Just take it easy and just leave it to the scholars. And you'll see that this is where the massive disconnect comes, where the public see and view the scholars as in ivory towers, out of touch, they don't know what they're talking about, don't support the public causes. And this is the statement of just the ignorant. So we just let the ignorant cry and moan as much as they want, because it's just ignorance, right? The scholars want to make sure that you don't get yourself in trouble. Like as if the scholars give a monkeys about drinking soda, but I just stream like they could care or no less if they've ever been to Subways or McDonald's or whatever's on the bloody list. Yeah? They do not know, they don't care. They're not people like you who live in their desires, whatever. But they just want to make sure that the institution is preserved, that methodology is all important. So, like I said to him on vaping, I said it's obviously it doesn't have the tar, but it has other problems, and you should really put pressure upon the guy to not do it. But I can't tell you it's haram. I can't tell you it's haram. And I can't say to you that it's haram to sell it as well. He was asking about some guy that was selling it. So, but it's absolutely as anti-ethical and anti-Islamic and anti-everything as it gets. Now, the Sheikh here then makes the point. He goes the same way when you're trying to say that there is a thing. Why didn't you tell me, man? Wow, 15 minutes, man. Right, let's finish this. You flipping paggy, man. Useless. And no one here as well. Nobody here either, man. So he goes that we can't be putting in these limits. We can't. And if there is a difference of opinion, then it's obligatory for it to be clarified. And so therefore we say, إن القول الراجح ما ذهب إليه شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية, that what the preponderant opinion, the class position is, and the best position on this matter is what Ibn Taymiyyah said, that أن المسافر مسافر ما لم ينوي واحد من أمرين. That a musafir is a musafir as long as he does not intend one of two things. Al-iqama al-mutlaqa, a general stop to journeying. Yeah? So a revoking of his status, basically of traveler. I have no idea how to translate that. Right? But al-iqama al-mutlaqa means a general residency. And then al-istitan. Al-istitan basically means that he's taken permanent residency. He's become a citizen, he's moved, he's done. And Shaykh says, وَالْفَرْقِ, the difference. أن المستوطن نوى أن يتخذ هذا البلد وطنا. The difference is that the Mustawtin has decided that this stop is not just a stop, but that he's going to make this country his watan. He's going to settle down and become a national. والإقامة المطلقة أنه يأتي لهذا البلد ويرى أن الحركة فيها كبيرة أو طلب العلم فيه قوي فينوي الإقامة مطلقا بدون أن يقيدها بزمن أو بعمل. And the other residency, effectively residency, is that he's coming just to check it out, see the vibe. He goes, feel the vibe, see what's going on. Or I'm going to study, and I'm not going to restrict myself to any time or any date. I'm not going to, give myself an exact kind of limit of any sort. ولكن نيته أنه مقيم لأن البلد أعجبه إما بكثرة العلم. But he says, I'm going to hang around because this country, I'm really impressed with it. Either because it's got a lot of knowledge, وإما بقوة التجارة أو لأنه إنسان موظف تابع للحكومة he is either seeing the business opportunities to be fantastic, or he is a government employee and he's just basically in the embassy and he's just fulfilling his completing his thing. And in all of these scenarios, you are clearly not a traveler. You are clearly hanging around. And so therefore, safar is gone. As for those people, أما من قيد الإقامة بعمل ينتهي أو بزمن ينتهي فهذا مسافر. As for the person who says that I'm only here for this period of time and actually knows the period of time and says 2 months, 10 days, 12 days, he's thinking like a person who doesn't want to hang around. This guy is a musafir. This guy is a musafir. ثم إننا إذا تأملنا القول بأنه تنقطع أحكام السفر إذا نوى إقامة أكثر من 4 أيام وجدنا هذا القول. If we think even further about the issue of the people who said it's about 4 days, anything more than 4 days, then you'll become a resident. Then just this itself is contradictory. It's self-defeating. He goes, for example, if you look at the concept of Jum'ah for the issue of the people who are travelers, في حكم المسافرين وفي غير الجمعة في حكم المقيمين. فمثل هذه الأمور تحتاج إلى دليل وتوضيح. ولهذا he goes, and if you really think about it, when you study the issue of Jum'ah, how they said that the muqim is different than the musafir in terms of counting the people, even the general army will be like, why is that? Where'd you get that from? And people then realize that that is actually just a self-made construct. It's an artificial construct. It's not something from the kitab or the sunnah. So he goes, and the last page, he goes, so how great is the statement of Ibn Qudama in Al-Mughni? May Allah have mercy upon him, when he was speaking about this concept of limiting the concept of safar to a certain day and how long that this should be. He goes, Inna tahdid tawqif. To limit something requires an evidence from Allah. It's got to be tawqifi. It's got to be absolute and clear. Right? Yani it has to be coming from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that requires dalil. فأي إنسان يحدد شيئا أطلقه الشارع فعليه الدليل. Anyone who wants to restrict that which the lawgiver has opened up needs an evidence. You've got to bring a clear evidence. Because when you do that, you are increasing the requirements, you're needing evidences, and it's not permissible to add to that which Allah has made general and you specify it or you restrict it. وَلِهَذَا قُلْنَا فِي الْمَسْحِ عَلَى الْخُفِّ. And he goes, this is why when it came to the issue of wiping on the sock, what a fantastic statement this is. He goes, when it comes to wiping on the sock, we don't speak about the sock having to be this many cuts, this many threads missing, there's a hole in it this size, there's a hole in it that size. Like the others said that if there's one hole that's bigger than this thing and one hole that's at the front, and if it's not covering the top, then this is not. We go that if a khuf is called a khuf by the people who see it and says that's a khuf, and they don't look to it and say that it's torn or it's got holes or whatever, we say the masah is permissible over it. Not that it's got to be a khuf that can't have this, that must have that must have this, that can't say that. These putting of conditions is something which is not acceptable. وَلَنَا فِي هَذَا رِسَالَةً. And he says, Shaykh Uthaymeen goes, obviously I've written about this before in somewhere else, and about what this position and the fact that it was chosen by the great scholars Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Qayyim, Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, and Abdul Rahman ibn Sa'idi, and Rashid Rida as well. That's an interesting addition. وَعَلَى كُلِّ حَالٍ, this is nice what he says here. He goes, and I'm busting all these names, but it's not like these names establish the truth, because the truth is not known by the amount of followers. لا نعرف الحق بكثرة الرجال وإنما نعرف الحق بموافقة الكتاب والسنة. The truth is known by it being in agreement with the book and the sunnah. Just mention those names just for the sake of it, which is a beautiful statement. All right, like Maryam says, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, then it ain't a dog, is it, bro? Yeah. So we'll go with that. I like that. Right, let's take a few questions. If you've got anything, did touch upon the Maliki position? Yes, the Maliki position. Yeah, it wasn't in there. I mean, because actually, it's not that different from what I remember. I think it's. You know what? I'll be guessing, but I also want to say that it's 20 prayers. Okay, but Imam Malik, by the way, you know that he is one of those that holds the opinion, the one that we call the Shaykh Walid opinion. You know, the people said this is Shaykh Walid, but I told you, it's been held by bigger people than that. So Malik's position is, if you come to you're traveling and you come to Dhuhr and the Imam's prayed 2 already, you only need to pray the last 2 with him. Remember we spoke about that last week or whatever? I forgot to mention that. So Malik has some pretty kind of out there ideas. He doesn't hold back. Right, let's take some questions online and here and there and whatever. Yes, Maysara? Shortening, yes. No. He was just giving the example of the masah as a concept of why is anyone trying to put conditions on the sock that you're wiping. But no, for the traveler, they just get extended time. 72 hours after you do your first wipe. Yeah? 24 hours for everybody else. Yeah.
How does that apply to refugees, for example? They might not know.
Yeah, I think that for refugees, 100%, I think refugees have the permission completely to be shortening all the time. They have absolutely no idea what the plan is, etc., etc., etc. But here's the thing. That when there's doubt, you go back to the default, right? I mean, we're speaking at the cutting edge of fiqh. But if you're scared or you're worried or you're thinking it's a risky position or whatever, it's not rocket science, right? The asl is that you pray in full. So if you're doubtful about what's happening, you pray in full.
Say that you're from one country and then you move to another and you go back to it as a holiday, would you be classed as a traveller?
Depends where you're going back to.
So you're going back to your birthplace.
But what is there in your birthplace? Your actual birth home?
Yeah,
Still own it?
yeah, no, your family.
So how do you feel when you go there? Do you feel like you're at home? That's the thing, right? We spoke about this over the last few weeks. This question's been coming up again and again and again. That, what do you do if you go back to your family home, your parents' home, right? And that depends upon how you see it, right? And technically speaking, if it's 300 miles away, 50 miles away, distance away, then you're technically a musafir. Especially if you're only hanging around for a little while and you're not completely unpacking, not completely staying, etc., etc. So therefore it makes sense. But as I said, this is something which is, we've already said that shortening is not obligatory. Our position is that it's not obligatory. It's a sunnah. It's a sunnah, right? That means that it is recommended to do, not obligated to do. That means that if I choose to pray full, that's allowed. Now, we've said this before, and if I haven't made it clear, I want to make it clear. That if a person decides to pray full, the only time that can be justified is when? When there's doubt. And not when? Why am I asking this question, and why am I telling you, why am I making sure that you answered when there's doubt? Because other people would do it for another reason. That reason is they think it's better, which is a massive bid'ah. Yeah? That's important for you to remember. Okay? So you should only be praying in full if you're just not sure. Not because, you know what it is, it's better to pray in full. Because that's not only just nonsense, but it's also you thinking that you're better than the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, which is a right mess and a rabbit's hole that you're going to go down, that you're not going to come back from. It's a disaster. Okay? So there's so what anyway, I was saying that most of the time you are going to pray normal, because when you go back home you're as feeling as home as you are. Especially now, this is why you can't give general answers, right? There are some people that always leave clothes at home, for example, right? So for example, I go back to Pakistan, you know, a couple of weeks a year, not very long, and sometime only maybe for a few days, but I leave clothes there, right? I have my electric blanket is in there. My electric blanket is the biggest proof that I'm at home, because it's the one thing that I miss so much when I'm outside of home, right? Home for people and traveling for people is defined, as I said, by comfort zones, right? About how you feel. And it's really interesting, because I went to see my parents yesterday, and I have some very close friends that live across the way, and he arrives, and he arrives at the same time as the Uber Eats guy comes in, and he's got a big smile on his face. I swear to God, I think maybe he orders Uber Eats and Deliveroo twice a day. Twice a day. Yeah? Like, I never seen anything like that in my life. I mean, I never thought that anybody uses Uber Eats more than Shazad Salim, but they do it, right? Now, these people are not normal in my book. There's something, I can tell you that either I've never ever used one of these services, or maybe used them once in my life, by the way. That's just, no, in Medina I used Al-Baik, but I think that was Al-Baik's own driver. I don't think it was a service. But anyway, but then I mean, that's when you need it. I mean, like, that's like today's, like, you know, when people are talking about how can we define who's a traveler in our time right now, you got to change the parameters. The parameters are when you needing to you go to a place and you're onto Deliveroo and you're onto Uber Eats, bro, you are a traveler, because that's just the way it is. Normal people. Now the problem is, if we said that for Shazad Salim, we got a problem. He's a traveler all the time. He's a traveler all the time, bro. And I'll tell you something. He's the first guy. He's not the first guy, actually. He copied me in this, but yeah, he took it to a different level, where his car is a representation of trying to take home with him. Because he's like, you know, he sees himself as always traveling. So the way that he packs, and the way that he keeps his ice, and the way that he carries his ice bag and box and everything, is all about, I've got to try to make sure that when I'm outside of home, I'm like exposed. I've got to minimize my exposure. I've got to protect myself. You know what I'm saying? Whereas normal people will be like, you know, easy, out there, just embrace whatever comes. You know, I'll sleep on the side there, I'll chill out here, there, whatever, whatnot. Whereas, like, you know, me, admittedly, and Shaz, like I said, to a different level. Bro, I'm going anywhere, I have to micromanage that bad boy, and whatever. I'd rather, you know, be stabbed in the eye than stay at somebody's house. You know, blah, blah, blah. Got to know all the parameters, know the bathroom, seeing it, all the water pressure, know what's happening. You know, so different parameters are going to make a person feel that they're a traveler or not. They used to say that if you feel that you're living out of a bag, because you either don't have the time or the energy or even the belief that it makes any sense to put the stuff in the drawers of where you are, you're a traveler. Now, a person might say, in the recent 1-2 years, only in the last recent 1-2 years, I actually now bother taking out underwear, t-shirts and all the rest of it and putting it in those drawers. Yeah? For the longest time, I just pull it out of the suitcase, like anybody does when you're in a hotel room. But for the last couple of years, I noticed that I'm like, you know what? It's mostly because I think my back bending down like at the lavanda, looking through it all the time, missions, whatever. So I stick it in the drawer. It's a bit easier. You can get it outstanding, right? Now, am I suddenly disqualifying myself from traveler status because I've actually put it into a drawer? It's a mindset. It's a mentality where you become dependent upon other people, where you don't feel comfortable in your environment and your surroundings like you would when you're at home. So I do believe that all of these subjective kind of measurements that a person can utilize to identify how they feel is valid. And I don't want to be that guy that says not allowed for you and haram for you and you've got to pray in full. Why would I do that? Why would I do that? And I think it matters. I think a sister-in-law matters. If you're a guy and you go to, a house, or you go to your in-laws' house, or you go to, you see, the in-laws' house is a minefield. That's like a political death trap, isn't it? You could really mess that up, right? And then, because how you're meant to get on with your father-in-law, everybody knows, right? It's a big yani thing, right? That could be seen so badly if you get it wrong. Now imagine you're going there and you're like, yeah, I'm doing qasr, and I'm not like giving salam to anybody else here, and you're not my mahram, and you know what I mean? When you go to the Pind and the Go and the Qarya, the village areas, and you're trying to create distance between you, which is what you normally do when you want to preserve traveler status, as opposed to them saying, this house is yours, and you're at home, and you're like, yeah, you know what, you just keep your home to yourself, and bro, listen, can I get to the kitchen to get a glass of water or not? What's happening? Is anyone walking around? You know what I'm saying? All these things have to be taken into account. And if you feel that there's going to be real bad insult taken, maybe be prayerful. I explained this a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and someone was saying, I don't get what his point is. I don't know how to explain this in any clearer way. I don't know how to make it any clearer. Anyway, yeah, sorry.
You're probably going to say the same thing about me.
Go on.
So you just said that, do I get disqualified by obviously unpacking and putting it in there?
In a hotel?
Yeah.
I think that it's easy. I think a hotel is easy. Once you're in a hotel, I think it's done. Like, meaning that, who stays in a hotel? You get what I'm trying to say? Like, I'll give you an example. When Jose Mourinho came here, we all knew that he was going to be going, who's Musafir anyway. Anybody, right? Everyone in football knew this is the guy who doesn't stay longer than 3 years in a club. So for me, he was Musafir. That's why I treat him like the flipping Musafir that he was. I don't know. Okay? Now the real question is that he didn't even hide that fact. He made it clear to everybody that was his intention. But just in case people like you, Bobby J, had any doubt about it, he didn't bother looking for a house. He just said, you know what, I'll just stay in the Lowry for this whole time. I'm just going to be using a hotel room. It doesn't matter how comfortable he gets in the Lowry. It's a what? His family weren't with him. Now, I ask you a question, brother. How can a person not be at home without his family? As Ibn Taymiyyah said, this evidence is against them, not for them. You're making it too easy, Bob. He's speechless for the first time in his life. The guy's completely bamboozled. You should, why again in Islam you say, is Mourinho my dad? That's what you should say, bro. So anyway, yes, go on.
If there's a situation that somebody can't, in the same area, they're not travelling anyway, but they're stuck somewhere near their house, they can't go to their house, and you don't know for how long they'll be there. They're not travelling.
Sure.
They're not in the state of travel as well.
Yeah.
So what situation would that be for that?
Anyone who's in this scenario, stuck in a place where they're in a normal town or normal whatever, they're never a traveller. This just means a person who's stuck.
But it's like there for years, so they've been held somewhere forcefully.
Oh, Ras, whoa, right, okay. Yeah, the way you were talking before, it was like, you know what I mean, there's traffic outside, you know what, bro, yeah, like, you know what, we can't go yet. They went from 0 to 100, yeah, now they've been kidnapped, yeah, and they're held hostage. Now, obviously, if someone's, like, held hostage or...
No, it's like a flood, something like you can't go to your house.
Yeah,
So you stuck.
yeah, I mean, you just pray...
Your house.
Okay, so you just pray normal. And try to pray on time. And I don't know what else to say, to be honest. But no, you're definitely not going to be shortening. And if, for example, a need for combining came, then that's something which is permissible. Yes, Shumalia. Oh, you finish? Sorry. Did I cut you mid-point?
I made a point, but I didn't ask the question.
Oh, go on then.
So, you're saying obviously you decide whether you feel like you're a traveller.
Yes.
But
No, I don't want to say you decide. I'm saying that a traveller is a traveller. And you will know whether you're a traveller or not. And if you don't feel like a traveller, then you're not.
But what if you're comfortable where you are, even though you've travelled?
Yeah, I think, bro, like I said, you know what, I'm traveling in first class? I can tell you one thing. I'm comfortable, bro. But I know that I'm a traveler. Traveler and comfort are not entirely synonymous, right? Don't mix up comfort too much, or be more specific what you mean about comfort. If you mean that you're in control, because I'm in comfort when I'm being driven by a chauffeur and when I'm flying first class, I'm in comfort, but I'm not in control, right? There are scenarios, for example, I need to, like if I'm on the motorway in a chauffeur car, I still have to kind of think, right, where am I going to stop for Maghrib? Where am I going to find a place? Whatever. If I'm in the air, right, I can be in an Ittihad residence or whatever it's called, yeah? And butlers and all the kind of whatever around me. Doesn't help me try to work out my arrival and this and that, whatever. So comfort here is not the comfort, luxury and just the beck and call, but when you have control of a situation, where you don't feel like an outsider, where you don't feel like you're dependent upon other people. Because when you're at home, you're not dependent upon people. Do what you want. Anyone who's confused about how to identify this, just think about what you're like when you're at home. What defines you when you're at home? It's confidence, it's control, it's stability, it's all kinds of things, right? And that's why I said to you, that's why I threw in the whole in-law situation. In my case, it's a sister-in-law. In your case, a brother-in-law. What's home? Home is like no hijab, nothing, chill out in your gym jams and everything. If there's someone prowling around, this, that, whatever, blah, 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 then, the situation kind of, So these are the little factors you use. Little factors that you use. Yeah. Right, where are we? Questions still? Or this situation's gone so long, man. And there's so many questions unanswered on the thing as well, man. Anyway.
I can end it with one button.
Ras, what I hear. In that case, if you are sleeping in your abaya and hijab at all times due to privacy reasons, you'd be a traveller even if the stay is long. But that's only if you thought that the travelling is entirely defined by your abaya and your hijab. But that's not what it is. It's a combination of everything. Is that our iman? I know that's iman. It's got to be her. She's saying Talabat is the real OG here. If you know, you know. That little fish. She's on Talabat, isn't she? That little monkey. Right. Okay, and then I will just do Adiba and Fatima's questions. According to the madhab positions, can you shorten the prayer for the first 4, 6, 15 days you stay and then pray full after? No, this is completely wrong. Yeah, Adiba? Whatever, if you're choosing a period of time, 4 days or 15 days, then first of all, you choose the position, so let's say 15 days. And then you say, right, your journey, I'm going to this place and I'm going to be there for 20. So you know from the first second, you're going to be there from 20, so from the first second, you've got to pray full prayers. That's how it works, okay? And finally, Fatima's question, if a woman experiences a hemorrhage where there is bleeding between the uterine wall and the chorionic membrane, which surrounds the embryo, does she continue praying like normal? Fatima, put this in the Telegram group. I'll come to that tomorrow, inshallah. I'll answer it there. Okay, now we can't be a bit long. I need to have a little think and research what that actually is. And thingy. About time, Imani, about time you joined the class, you little fish. سبحانك اللهم بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك اللهم وأتوب إليك. See you guys this Friday at University of Salford and then at the University of Manchester for the rest of the weekend. Don't miss it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.